Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most elusive yet attainable events available on Arena for budget players. That is the Premier Draft. That is an elusive event because it carries a price tag of 10,000 gold or 1,500 gems, but it is attainable for us budget players because you have an alternate entry of a token. And around here, I highly recommend buying the mastery passes. And with those mastery passes, you get draft entry tokens. So let's talk about why these events are important, why you may want to be doing them, and why you might want to hold off on this one.
But before we get into all that, what do you say we do the awkward thing and promote the channel? Allow me to take this opportunity to invite you to subscribe to the Planeswalker Stronghold for all your new player, free-to-play, budget, and midweek Magic needs. As you can see, we aren't one of these huge channels that fluctuates tons of subscribers on any given day and doesn't even notice. Around here, you matter. Just like these fine folks here, who recently subscribed to the channel and chose to make their subscription public. You see, the YouTube algorithm seems to think that budget arena content doesn't matter. And while I know I can't change that, I think we can. So click the subscribe button to support the channel, and tap the bell icon so you don't miss on an upload. And build a more efficient collection along the way. Now, what were we talking about? Oh, right.
So this was supposed to be one of my classic limited videos where I start out by drafting the set and then building a deck and then showing you some of the highlights of the actual gameplay. But instead, I'd like to have a discussion about what's good and what's bad about these premier level events. As I alluded to in the intro, what tends to be bad is the cost barrier to these. 10,000 gold, 1,500 gems is a lot from a budget perspective. Really, that's multiple standard drafts and or I should say quick drafts, and really no additional cards on that unless you do very well. You might get as many as 5 additional non-draft packs. So essentially, if you go 7 wins on this, you end up getting as many packs as you would from 2 quick drafts, but probably not as many cards because, of course, the draft packs are larger with more uncommons and commons, and the gems also would be pretty darn nice here. Not gonna fit. But the odds of being a value drafter and doing that well are much lower. In fact, in a premier draft, I'd say your average quick value drafter is going to be lucky to get 1 win, much less 2 or 3. Beyond that, frankly, is typically beyond my skill level, and thus I have to assume it is beyond yours as well. What is very nice about this, and the reason that I am attracted to these, is they are a nice gateway to older historic sets. For instance, Dominaria is one of my least developed parts of my collection. So my intent was to sit down today and add a few packs worth of cards to that collection and slowly build it up while I had the time.
You see, on Arena, the winds are always blowing and they're always changing directions. So to be a competent budget player, you have to be willing to pay attention to these things, to shift with the wind, change your tactics in order to better build your collection. Always be on the pivot and ready to make a change. Recently, we have been discussing the somewhat surprise edition of Alchemy Horizons Boulder Gates, which is now scheduled for release direct to historic in July. This is going to come along with its own mastery set, draft gameplay modes, and quote unquote more. I know one of the mores that I have been looking at is the additional complications to us as budget players by essentially releasing a fifth set for the year, which isn't even going to be standard legal and most likely not quick draft available. So my thought process right now is this is a much more relevant use of a draft token than something like a premier draft of Dominaria. The somewhat unspoken rule of Magic, and by extension Arena, is that the more recent cards are typically going to be more powerful and more relevant than cards that are several years older. Thus, I want to make sure I'm getting as much of this Alchemy Horizons Baldur's Gate release as I possibly can, and prioritizing that much higher than something like I am Dominaria, which is now, 4 years old, something like that. So my advice is hold on to those tokens. You're going to have better uses for them in July. Unless Dominaria is just a set that holds a particular mystery or appeal for you, you are probably better off spending wild cards for individual sets or individual cards for a set that's this old, as opposed to trying to build it through a very expensive and difficult to acquire draft mode for us budget players.
So while I definitely appreciate events like this Premier Draft Dominaria coming up in the rotation, I definitely think it's a good use for a draft token in general. I always reserve my draft tokens for historic only sets. Generally, I find quick draft to be a much more desirable and economically friendly way to acquire my standard sets or alchemy in general. I will definitely be partaking in these in the future. I don't want to tell you to not do these, but definitely keep in mind that right now, because of that direct to historic release coming in July, there is probably a better use for that draft token in the short run, particularly if you only have one or two. I right now have four. If I had a fifth one, I probably would go ahead and do this Dominaria set, because I think 4 premier drafts on a set is quite a lot. I don't know that I'd ever want to do more than 4 at one time on a set, but I guess that portion remains to be seen. I, for one, will be holding this for July and looking to do those Boulder Gates drafts, because again, my inclination is that there will not be a quick draft option for that direct to historic release. Please feel free to prove me wrong, Wizards. This is one of those I'd really love to be wrong. But at any rate, that's my expectation. That is my plan, and by extension, my advice to you.
All right, so with all that having been said, don't forget, smash the like button like Hulk would. And of course, comment and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And one last thing, myself, I'm coming to you from America, and I have noticed that about 1/3 of my viewership is coming from the US, and about 1/3 is coming from various countries. And there's about 1/3 of my viewership that is just getting lumped into other. So to let me know you got to the end of the video, throw me a comment down in there and let me know where you are watching from.